decided to stay after 6 months?
Well, yeah, we were loving it here, so we said, we'd like to continue here. And so Rob was able to extend, and he extended 2-3 times. And he worked also with Hashim Thaçi when Hashim Thaçi became Prime Minister. And then he was offered another job back in London, like back working for the British government. So he moved back to London. We moved back to London, but we kept on a room here in a house, not the house we'd had before, but just a small room, because I was working with Save the Children. And so I was commuting back and forth every maybe 6 weeks. I would come back to Kosovo. So we still had a base here, but just not here full time. And Rob would come sometimes. And that lasted for a couple of years. And then Rob applied for a job at ICO when there was the ICO here. And so we moved back full time to live here then. And then after that, he got another job in Albania. So that's why now I split my time 3 ways. So we still have our house here that we rent in Peyton. And we come back here to keep things going with the Ideas Partnership with our NGO, to see our friends. And,
Okay, we'll get to that. And how's your life like throughout? Can you describe us more descriptive account
of living in Kosovo?
Yeah.
Well, so
you've also been in a very critical period. I mean, these transitions and
yeah.
over, they're not very easy. And it was just two years since 2004.
Yeah, that's right.
Also, and then just a bit before independence.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, quite delicate.
Well, I remember we were told to keep a bag ready for if we had to, evacuate quickly, and like to have our trainers in a bag, and to have a bottle of water, and to have any medicines, and and money in small amounts, and so for the first year or so, it did feel like living in a place that things could get frightening, because people remembered what 2004 was like, and of course what 1999 was like. But I'm very grateful that we didn't ever need to do anything like that. And then I guess then we were here for independence, and that was just so exhilarating. I mean, it was exhilarating for us. I can't imagine what it was like for people who'd been here for generations. But that felt like an achievement and like a landmark. And of course, that probably wasn't true. But the really hard work had to start after independence. But I guess that was all interesting, and felt, particularly for Rob, for his work, that was important. But my work wasn't really connected so much with that. I was excited to be able to do things like I volunteered at the Ethnological Museum. That was a really exciting thing to do. I made some really good friends there, and it's just such a beautiful building and a place where I still feel very happy. Just walking in there gives me this sense of being in the right place, and also a way that I learned a lot about Kosovo's history and cultures, and the handcrafts and these things that I care about.
And what capacity did you help them, like in the narrative?
So I did. No, I didn't help. That had already been done. It opened almost exactly the time that I arrived here. So it's been there all of my Kosovan life. But I taught English to the guides, so I held English classes there. And then I helped them apply for some funds. We had a grant from the British Embassy for Artists in Residence Week, which was a really nice event where we invited artists to come and be in the museum every day and make paintings or sculptures or works while they were there. And then their work was auctioned at the end of the week. And we raised more money than it had cost us to do it. So it was a really great, it was a nice initiative. And we did a photography project there as well, and of course the staff there, took a lead in things more and more. And so once we'd shown that there were a lot of people who really loved that museum, I think that gave them also the motivation to see that it was worth being experimental and creative. And they're very, very creative, and they've made a real success of it. So we did the first a craft fair of craftspeople coming and demonstrating their skill every day for a week, and then at the end a fair of activities, and that is still continuing now and is much, much bigger now, and they've done great things with it. So yeah, I really enjoyed doing all of that. I also set up, trained foreigners who were here to teach English classes after school. So we had 5 schools around Prishtinë where we ran clubs, English clubs, and we had a short kind of curriculum, and that was really fun. Just last night I met with one of my volunteers who had been a volunteer there, and he is still in touch with the family of one of the boys that he had taught, and he calls them my Kosovan family. And it's lovely to think, that was, I don't know how many years ago was that, 9 years ago, and still he's in contact with them. So, this was what I was busy with, which wasn't related to independence. And
did you have a social life, like friends?
Yeah, lots of friends. And we're both, Rob and I are godparents, or Kumbar and Ndrikula, not religious godparents, to our very good friends, Alisa and Burim, their little daughter, Adena. And so that's very important to us, because that's a kind of formal connection. We did the formal ceremony of cutting her hair, and that family, I like to feel that that's part of our family, or we're part of their family, and so we have good friends like that. And now with the work that we do through the Ideas Partnership, there are lots of families that we've helped and who are, we're connected with in a very fundamental way. So we have a social. So we'd started doing these kind of projects, like I said, working with the Ethnological Museum or this English clubs, and those were all, we had no NGO, we had no funds, it was just volunteering, and other people were volunteering. But after a few years of doing that, we realised that if we wanted to apply for things, for example, like the residencies at the museum, we needed to have a bank account, and we needed to be transparent. And people were also starting to give us money because they liked what we were doing. So someone would give us, 50 euros and for the work of our charity. We'd put it in an envelope and write on the envelope, but it wasn't very transparent. So we decided we would register as an NGO. So we got together with our friend Ardi and Arifai, and the 3 of us, Rob, me and Ardi, registered the Ideas Partnership in 2009. But we didn't have any big plans for it, and we didn't have a particular project in mind. It was just so that we had an organisation. And that's why we chose this name, the Ideas Partnership, to be very neutral. It didn't say that we were working on environment or on cultural heritage or on education. Just, those were our 3 themes, but just to have a vehicle. And then we did it. Our first, it wasn't a big project, I think it cost 2,000 euros or something. It was quite a small project, but was running an environmental summer camp in Rugova, and we worked with 2 other NGOs on that. But indirectly that led to everything else, because the summer camp was a multi-ethnic camp. It had Albanians and Bosnians and Roma, Ashkali and Egyptians. And one of my jobs was to to work with the children through the camp, to have a project that they wanted to implement after the camp. And then after the camp, my job was to go and visit those children around Kosovo and help them make so very small things, like one of them was trying to put bins in the school playground so that children could put their rubbish there. There was this group from Fushë Kosovë, who were Roma, Ashkali and Egyptian, who wanted to plant a little garden in their community. So I went with them and met them in their homes or in their community. And that's the first time I went to a Roma, Ashkali or Egyptian community in Kosovo, and I was really shocked. Even though I'd been here by then for 5 years and 4 years, and I had heard about the conditions of the Roma. I knew the statistics, but I'd never actually been in a community. And to see the rubbish pickers and to see the poverty, and especially when you know Prishtinë from the cafes and from an international bubble again. So that really made me want to work with that community. And we had some things left over from the summer camp, like some sleeping bags and some plates and random things. And I thought, well, I can give those to some families in need, because I could see there was the real need. And so I asked if somebody could take me to the 6 poorest families in the community. I said I wanted to do it myself because these had been donated to us. I wanted to have the kind of accountability for where things had gone. And it happened that one of the families I took the stuff to, the little boy of the family, who was 3 at the time, had just recently been playing in their very crowded, very small house and had pulled a pan of boiling water off the stove and had really badly burnt himself. And so when I went to give these sleeping bags and plates and random stuff to this family, they were like, thank you very much, but please can you help our son? And I said, you know, I can't help him. I don't know what to do to help him. Like, he'd already been to hospital, so it hadn't just happened. But they said he needed an operation because the skin was so badly burnt that he couldn't walk properly because it was kind of all tight in his groin. And so I said, I'm sorry, you know, I'm a teacher, I'm not a doctor. And I walked away. And like, I couldn't walk very far because, you know, he had been his body was so damaged. So I rang my friend Mary, who is a British woman who'd been a doctor here for a long time, and I said, like, what could I do to help, or what should I do? What's the system? And she said, well, if he has been to hospital, then they should have some papers, and there should be a doctor's name, and you could get in touch with that doctor. So I went back to their family and said, okay, show me the Fletlershim or whatever from hospital, and there was, of course, a stamp there with the doctor's phone number, so I called him and I said, what can be done? And, I mean, long story, but I went in the end with the mother, Hateme, and the little boy. And what was significant was that the doctor actually said, there isn't anything that can be done now to operate because he's so small. The skin needs to be just kept supple, and then it can be operated later. And so all that's needed is some cream to rub into the skin every morning and evening. And the cream cost €9, which is not very much, but for their family, the dad was a rubbish picker, that was impossible. So I was like, okay, I can buy the cream. And I said, call me when it runs out and I'll come and bring you some more. And that turns out to have been the most significant moment in my time in Kosovo, because what that meant was that basically every 2 weeks I would get a phone call, I'd go and buy some cream, I'd go and visit the family. And at first I just handed over the cream, and the next time I was invited in, and the next time I was given tea, and the next time, you know, the neighbours came round, and that's how I became a real part of that community, yeah. So I didn't go there with the idea of having a project or opening a centre or doing any of the things that we do now, but because I just got to hear about, oh, these kids need to go to school, these kids need shoes, and these children aren't vaccinated, and let's do something about that. And that's really how our work started. So it was very natural and organic.
And it all started with this family?
Yeah, with that family, yeah. And I visit them every time I'm in Kosovo. I visit them. That's where I've come from today. Because in fact, it was... Yes, exactly, the sister of that little boy. So I went from, so Jelana wasn't at school. Well, first of all, there were the brothers. The brothers weren't at school and they needed shoes. So I bought them shoes, and that is all that they needed. They are still at school. Like 7 years later, those boys are still in school. I just was talking to them this afternoon. So I thought that was all that was needed, was, okay, shoes. We can get shoes for as many children as we need. And then Jelana said she wasn't in school. She was 9 at the time. And I said, well, then I'll buy you shoes. Like, I know the solution to this one. And she said, no, it's too late. You know, the school won't accept me. And I couldn't believe that that was true. I thought she was just making it up as an excuse. So I went to the school. I said, you know, there's a misunderstanding here because there's this 9-year-old girl who wants to go to school and she thinks that she's too late. And the school said, no, it's true. She's too late to come. She can't come now. So then I went to the ministry and I said, like, you've got this director who doesn't understand because he's saying this girl can't come. And the ministry said, yeah, he's right. They're just too hard to teach, they said. So this was when I said to Jelana, okay, I'll start teaching you. And then she said, well, can some of my friends come? And so that's how we started doing the work with them. And then we got Jelana.
Work in Albanian with the community?
Yeah, in Albanian. And then we got her to school, and we got them all to school. Well, we got 62 children to school in 2011. And then we realised we needed to keep them in school, which is kind of a different thing. So we started various projects, including working with the mothers to offer in a social enterprise so that the mums could earn some money and the kids would then not need to go out begging or go rubbish picking. So we're still continuing that now. And then this family still didn't have a house, or they were living in just one room, and it was horrible. And one day the youngest boy came to our activities and he had a mark on his cheek, and I said, like, what happened? And he said, oh, the rats bit me in the night. And I was like, okay, this is no good. You know, we've done all the right things. We've vaccinated the children. Hatema is now working in this social enterprise. The kids are all in school. They've all got shoes. But if they're living in a room that's got rats in it and the children are being bitten at night, then actually I've achieved nothing. And it's almost hypocritical to say, like, look what a great job we've done when the family is left like that. And so I felt very torn because I wanted to help that family, but by then I knew there were lots and lots of families, and they were one of the worst off because of this very small room that they were in, and that's overcrowding that had caused the little boy to pull the boiling water over himself was because of being in such a small space. But I still felt like the Ideas Partnership couldn't go and build a house for just one family. That wouldn't be fair, and we couldn't justify that money. But then my friend Nicola came to visit, and she came with me to see this family, and she came away and she said, they can't stay there, you know, this is just outrageous. How about if I raise the money and, you know, you can help me, but it won't be through the Ideas Partnership, it won't be you. So that was really significant because she then really stormed ahead, used her friends and her contacts and used Facebook and raised enough money to buy some land for them. And then Mercy Corps said they would build a house on the land. If we could buy the land, they would build the house. So we did all that, and about 3 years ago, must be almost exactly 3 years ago, they moved into their new house. And they were like, you know, the luckiest, happiest family in Fushë Kosovë. And then 3 months later, so in February, the father had a heart attack and died. So leaving 6 children. At that time they were aged 3 to 13. Jelana was 13. So from having been like the luckiest, happiest family, and we kind of thought they were on their way, we'd sorted things, they were now, you know, able to look after themselves. Suddenly they were a very, very vulnerable family and very fragile. Hatema still had to look after the little one at home, so she couldn't even go out rubbish picking. The eldest son, on the day his father died, he said to me, well, I've got to leave school now, I have to take the wheelbarrow and go rubbish picking. And I was like, no, your dad did not want that, you know, your dad wanted you at school. So we've tried to support them in various ways, and we've set up a project now within the Ideas Partnership, which is named after Agron KRASNIQI, the dad, and it's the Widows Fund. And so it's for his family benefits, but also other families who are widows, because I just hadn't realised how vulnerable a family is when their father dies, especially if they've still got young children, and so the mum can't even go out and work, even if there was easy work for her. And of course they had no money saved, and they didn't even have any food in the cupboards, you know, they just had nothing. From that day they had nothing. And I hadn't really ever thought about what that meant, and that of course Vebi, the older boy, was going to have to leave school to work unless somebody else helped the family. So yeah, we're basically having, you know, started trying to support a little 3-year-old boy who'd been burnt, and then discovering the issues about education and starting clothing distributions to get the children shoes so they could go to school, then tackling this question about children being allowed into school, then starting the social enterprise so that their mums could earn money to continue at school. And now we do lots of things. You know, we've looking at ways to try to make the community itself more agents for change for themselves. So we have this vision that of having 3 levels, helping people in need, so that would be giving the tube of cream for Ramadan's burns, helping people in need to help themselves, so of course that's what every charity tries to do, and that's about education often and all the work, the social enterprise. But then the 3rd level, which I think is quite unusual in what we do, is not just helping people in need to help themselves, but helping people in need to help others in need. So that however poor you are, you can be the one who can pass on your knowledge, or you can share what you have, or you can. So, for example, we have a bursaries scheme. So Agron, in fact, was on that scheme before he died so suddenly, for adults, so people like Agron who are in their 30s, to go back to school, to evening classes, so they can get their high school diploma. And we pay the costs of that, which is €150 a term, so it's not a big cost. But again, it's way too much for a rubbish picker to be able to afford.
And so young, is that a
yeah.
thing?
Well, yes, the life expectancy is very short. For can't remember the figures now, but I think it's 7 years less. I think the average life expectancy for Roma, Ashkali, or Egyptian compared to the average in Kosovo. I mean, in his case, it was this particular. It was kind of like a heart attack, but it's called an atrial myxoma. It's a particular heart condition. And that's not linked specifically to being a rubbish picker or being poor, but of course all these things are connected, and there are high levels of smoking, there's very poor air quality because people like living in that tiny room with a wood stove or a lignite stove. Of course, people make bad choices because they don't have an education, so they spend money on something that's really not very important for their health. So a child has a temperature and they'll rush to a private hospital when in fact probably they could just give the child liquid overnight and rest, and by the morning it might be fine. But a child might have something like an epileptic attack and they just don't get around to going to the doctor about it. So they're not making good decisions about which things to focus their money or their health attention. And often there's just they don't know the implications of what they're doing. Health, nutrition, for example. There's very little knowledge about the importance of, if you've got a small budget, but do you spend that on fruit and on beans, or do you spend it on ice cream for the children or sweets for the children? And often families, they want to treat their children, of course, everyone wants to indulge their children, so the budget goes on crappy crisps for the children, or instead of actually buying food that would be nutritious. Or the doctors, we know the health system in Kosovo is probably Kosovo's biggest crisis, and the doctors quite often prescribe things which are very expensive, may not even be necessary. So they'll prescribe something like Floridix, that syrup that's got vitamins in it. That costs €11 for a bottle of Floridix. And you could get the same benefit by buying, some oranges, some spinach and some beans. And so people will come to us with a receipt, with a prescription, and they'll say, the doctor says I've got to have this. And I can't afford €11, so please will you cover it? And when I look at it, I'm like, no, just go and buy some beans. This is going to do the same thing for your health. But they don't have the knowledge to make that judgment because they haven't been educated about vitamins or about what Floridix is. They can't read the label to even see what it is. They just know the doctor told me to buy this and it will make me better. So we're doing a lot of health work now as well. We have a community health advisor. We also have a midwife who comes and works with about 40 women every week because we're trying to make sure that babies are born at home. There's a very high child mortality rate, really outrageously high. So in Kosovo as a whole, it's from every 1,000 babies born, 12 die before their first birthday, which is very high. But in the Roma and Ashkali community, it's 41 babies out of 1,000. So that's a scandal that we're trying to do something about, making sure babies are born in hospital, that they're vaccinated, that mothers know how to look after their babies with things like smoking and breastfeeding and how to have a healthy...
Is there a way how to support them through the ideas partnerships? Like what is the work that the women do?
The midwife is so she'll come and have sessions like consultations with the women, and our community health assistant makes home visits to everyone who has a baby, takes them some blankets and some baby clothes, and also checks the paperwork to see what the hospital said when their checkup is, have they had their vaccinations, reminds the mum when she needs to go. Because if you can't read, then you've just had a baby, you've just been left hospital, you can't always remember all of that information. So
what do children do to help others to pay forward?
Well, we have a children's council, which is a group of children, one from each age group, who come to our classes, and they meet every month, and they have a small budget, a €50 a month budget, and they have to decide what to spend that on that's for the benefit of other people, so not for their own benefit. And yeah, so I didn't finish saying about the bursaries. So the bursary recipients, we pay for them to go to evening classes or to go to university, but in exchange they have to do something every week for their community. So lots of them volunteer at our Saturday activities where we have kids coming to have academic support, but some of them help with clothing distribution, some of them help with transports, one helps with going to make home visits to pregnant women. So whatever their interest is, someone run a football club, I mean, they can do their interests, but we're trying to encourage that sense of civic engagement and being part of the community. And we're now spreading, I mean, Fushë Kosovë is our biggest project, and it was our first, but we're now in 6 municipalities. So we work in Lipjan, in Janjevo town. We work in Jakova, where we work with the blind children, so that's a separate project, along with the Society of the Blind there. We work in Istok, and our office is in Prishtinë, so we're active across.